So you move to the Philippines. In this video, we discuss how do you build meaningful relationships as a Filipino-American and or expat with local Filipinos. What is up, everyone? This is Gil, and if you are returning, I really appreciate it. I really do. But if you're new around here, I live in the Philippines right now, Cebu City to be specific. I am an executive here and a business consultant for those of you who want to talk brainstorming and things like that. Here is my email, or you can check out in the description my Calendly so we can get some time together and talk business. But let's get to how to build meaningful relationships with the locals here in the Philippines. So picture this, you just landed in the Philippines. The beaches are breathtaking, the mountainscapes are awe-inspiring, the food is ridiculously delicious, and the locals are some of the friendliest people you've ever met. But weeks turn into months, and you notice something unsettling. Your social life feels hollow. Small talk with your neighbors just doesn't fill the void anymore. And your new Facebook friends doesn't translate into meaningful connections. The truth is, making friends as a Filipino-American and or expat isn't about proximity. I might get some weird looks about this. It's about strategy and vulnerability. So today I will try my best to show you how to build friendships with locals that are more than surface level. And hopefully I'll share stories with you that challenge what you think about being welcomed in a foreign land. And if you stick till the end of the video, I believe that you will get a lot of value from this one. So let's start with Mike. Mike is from Australia. And unfortunately, like many expats and or Filipino Americans, he thought he had it figured out. He would go to expat bars, join meetups, and network with fellow foreigners. Naturally, he assumed that it was common ground. He's not viewed as an outsider, and he thought it would be enough to build, long-lasting relationships or friendships. But unfortunately, here's a catch. Most of those connections were transactional. People were there to share stories, not build bonds. So one day, after a typhoon knocked out electricity in the whole entire condominium complex, and for 3 days, mind you, Mike realized one thing. He didn't have anyone to call on to or fall back on. Not a single person. So lesson one for me, especially relying on Filipino-American and expat circles, it's sometimes a trap. If you want real friendships, you kind of have to immerse yourself in the local culture as well as that Phil-Am expat culture as well. So one of the first steps I took was showing authentic, genuine interest in the culture and moreover, their lives, because it's just not about hospitality. I would love to hear this. Comment down below, as a Filipino-American and or expat, do you have more foreigner friends, Phil-Am friends, or do you have more Filipino friends? And then there's Jenna, a Filipino-American who moved to the Philippines to reconnect with her roots. She assumed, and you know what assuming does, she assumed that her heritage would be a lot easier to build relationships and friendships here in the Philippines. She thought it would be a lot easier. She thought wrong. She quickly learned the hard truth of it. Unfortunately, being a balikbayan comes with unspoken expectations. A family gathering should be considered the rich cousin from the States. They're all the way up there type vibe. And then that opens up for, relatives and people, local people in general, asking for favors, asking for, pay for this, pay for that, jobs, especially in my case, sponsorships, unfortunately. And a lot of these things are out of our control. As a Filipino American, when you can't say yes, you definitely feel the difference, the gap, the people distancing themselves from you. And this is what Jenna felt. So here's what Jenna discovered. Transparency is the key. So the Filipino culture values pakikisama. It loosely translates into harmony and smooth relationships. And in Bisaya, I believe the same thing is like magsinabot, makasinabot mo. It means that you guys can get along with each other. So Jenna, and including myself, I set boundaries, or she set boundaries very early when trying to build meaningful relationships with local Filipinos, explaining her limits kindly but firmly, because the people that are meant to be with you, that authentically want to be with you, are going to be with you. The people that are fake and phony, they're going to alienate themselves or just not even get back to you, and then and eventually fall off. So the takeaway I would love everyone to get out of this is respecting the cultural nuances, but not losing yourself in wanting to fit into the culture. You gotta find that balance, to be honest with you. Comment on below of an instance in your life when here in the Philippines that you were put in a weird situation where you had to put your foot down. It might help somebody out there. So the third one is like breaking the politeness barrier, right? So here's something they won't tell you, or maybe they do tell you. Filipinos are incredibly polite. Driving on the road, totally different story. I mean, totally different story. So polite, in fact, you might mistake their friendship for deeper interest. Especially men, this is what get men into trouble. Let me introduce you to a guy named Tom, a British expat, who mistook casual invitations for serious commitment. But you know, I try to tell Filipinos, local Filipinos especially, some families, you can't even visit them without a proper call, like, hey, is it okay if I visit you? Here, it's a bit different here. So a neighbor invited Tom to the fiesta like many people do here, because there's probably literally a fiesta every weekend, or every day for that matter. Somewhere in the Philippines. So Tom assumed that they were close friends because he got invited to the house and things like that. Because, like I said, in America, sometimes that's like a privilege. Here, it's a constant. But after months after the fiesta of not hearing from the person anymore, he kind of got hit with reality that politeness doesn't equate to friendship, because in the Filipino culture, invitations are generally thought to be inclusive, not necessarily to build like deep bonds. Because at the end of the day, Filipinos are the same. Real friendships take time, you know, because you have to build the trust, you have to build that bond, you have to build that really like super tight communication with people, Filipino or otherwise. So the lesson here is that if you're not used to that sense of that hospitality, that kindness, if you're not used to having that sense of openness, that sense of that instant friendliness, don't confuse kindness for closeness. If you really want to break through the barrier of, like, you know, extreme politeness, like with anything, you have to invest time and be consistent. You know, relationships are built on showing up, not just coming from time to time at the end of the day. So the next one is something that I had to get reused to and really set my boundaries hard. It's giving without expecting. So there's this thing called in the Filipino culture, utang na loob, or it's like a debt of gratitude. You know, in its simplest form, it is a very beautiful value and concept because it is built-in gratitude, you know, and things like that. But it can be misunderstood by expats or Filipino-Americans who are not really used to being or really deeply, you know, living a Filipino-centric life, even in their home countries. Let me tell you about a girl named Sarah. She loves giving gifts and giving small tokens to her newfound friends. Just showing appreciation. But when she didn't receive anything in return, she felt some type of way, you know, like some people do. She felt unappreciated, understandably. What Sarah didn't realize that sometimes in the Filipino culture, giving is not transactional. It's literally about fostering goodwill and building a connection and not keeping score. Because Filipinos hate when you bring up something that you gave to them. In Bisaya, it's called boy boy. Filipinos hate that. For those of you who are married or have partners that are Filipinas, or just Filipinos in general, you know what I'm talking about. But once Sarah stopped expecting anything in return, something remarkable happened. You know, the friends she was making started inviting her to the homes, cooking meals for her, like bringing her dishes, lunches, breakfast, and things like that, inviting her for early breakfast, you know, impromptu invitations as well, and eventually treating her like family, you know, part of their circle of communication. So here's the takeaway: give freely however you want. Don't expect anything in return, and trust that reciprocation is coming. And obviously, don't expect anything at the end of the day. Comment on below a time where you didn't expect anything by giving anything to anyone, and you were blessed or gifted in a way where you didn't expect. And last but not least, the loneliness test. I call this a loneliness test. So there's this thing about being a Filipino-American and being an expat where when it comes to building meaningful, you know, friendships, that you are from time to time, or many times, going to be alone. Because people, even with me being Filipino-American and me being who I am at work or just around, you know, just trying to network, it does get lonely from time to time in that sense, because it just does, unfortunately. No matter how much I seek out, no matter how much I try, sometimes it does get lonely because, you know, some of the people, because of the hierarchy here, structure here, many people don't even want to, they're too ashamed to want to hang out or just be like, oh, you know, talk to me sometimes. And, you know, it does get lonely. I remember a story about a guy named Dave. He's a Canadian retiree that lived in Cebu. You know, he spent his first year feeling isolated, although he was surrounded by people. So one day, a local, person invited him to a cleanup event in the neighborhood. Dave hesitated, said he was busy. Dave thought that picking up trash was not a good way to build a meaningful friendship. Reluctantly, after being asked many times, but Filipinos ask you many, many times and invite you many, many times, he reluctantly went. So that day, Dave worked side by side with locals. Ultimately, everyone got their guards down because you're busy working, cleaning for the community. They shared laughs and ultimately bonded over that very simple agenda for the day. That particular event became the turning point for someone like Dave. So he realized the antidote for loneliness is not to wait for people to come to you. For the most part of my life and my time here in the Philippines, it's always been me engaging because of understanding that people might be too ashamed to talk to me, or just, it could be the language barrier. They don't know I speak Bisaya, and social status as well. But I found myself, like Dave, me actively going out there and trying to make the connection. And at the end of the day, it goes without saying that you have to try to, you're going into the Philippines. The Philippines is not coming to you. You're going into the Philippines, so it makes sense to absorb and assimilate to the culture as much as you can. Get to know it. That's how I approach it for the close to 20 years I've been married with my wife. So the test of loneliness is whether or not you feel it. It's, for me, what you do when you do feel it. So my answer was just like Dave, was engage with the people, engage with the community. Because at the end of the day, many of them are like really dying to talk to an expat or Filipino-American, because for them, think about this, like for them, they don't come across it all the time. So for them, for local Filipinos, they want to be able to pick your brain as well. And from there, that bridge is built for you guys to communicate and hopefully be on track to build a meaningful, friendship. In conclusion, now it's your time to ask yourself, what kind of friend am I willing to be? Obviously, like with anything, general statement, building relationships and friendships in the Philippines, it's not about what you can take from it. It's about what you can give to it, or your willingness to give to it. And I'm not talking about money either, but more your time, your patience, and your authenticity. So don't just aim to make friends, aim to be someone worth befriending. So here's the truth. The quality of friendships and relationships you have will define the experiences you have as a Filipino-American and or expat that will clearly do better than a beach, a resort, a night out at a restaurant ever could here in the Philippines. With that said, if you are an entrepreneur or you have any business ideas you want to talk about, brainstorm, I might be the guy for you. Book some time with me. The link is in my Calendly in the description. And this is my email as well. You can reach out to me as well. And if you like this type of video, watch this video. Take care, God bless, and I'll see you in the next video. And hopefully you can hit the subscribe button and like the video. Bye now.